Welcome to another episode of the Soul Sovereignty and Sexuality Podcast with Jessica Falcon. I'm excited to be here with you today. I initially said that we were going to talk about the body as the soul and how to access that. And we will talk about that in a future episode. But instead, today I'm going to talk about something that happened last week because I really want this podcast to be me coming to you, bringing what's really alive, bringing what's in the air, and what I see a lot of my clients dealing with, what I deal with. I want this to be real and practical. Because it's one thing to say, yes, I'm going to be in my power. I'm going to be in my sovereignty. I'm going to claim my freedom. But it's another to really know how to do that and a real practical daily lived experience. And that's, for me, the most important. As an international soul embodiment guide, I see people kind of get in this heady concept of spirituality and it feels very far away from earth and very far away from how they live their actual lives and the choices they make. And for me, this is about bridging our awareness, our consciousness with our choices, our words, our relationships, our actions, our work. So it's tangible, it's felt, it's experienced. This is not simply about a concept. And for me, it is not a coincidence that as I'm starting this podcast, solo. I've been doing the Radically and Body Love podcast for 1.5 years with my beloved colleague, Nas Barbik. But as I start this podcast and really begin to speak deep soul truths that until now I've been really afraid to speak and talk about so publicly and so openly, because it took me years to develop that inner safety, that inner confidence, that inner trust. It's not a coincidence that as I am beginning this, I had another initiation into speaking my truth, because the soul, my soul, definitely brings me opportunities and circumstances to help me more deeply embody my reclamation. And that's what this situation was for me. So I want to talk about this because it's about speaking truth. And I haven't met a single client from around the world who hasn't confronted fears about speaking their truth. For me, in this particular situation, which I'll describe a little bit in more detail in a minute, I knew that I was being asked to speak my truth no matter the consequence. That is a lesson that my own spirit guides and soul have guided me into over and over and over for a solid 10 years now. Because I have been killed for my truth in many past lives, as many of us have. I've had very vivid memories of those past lives, of literally looking into the eyes of the person who was putting me to death for my truth. I've spent several years healing and reclaiming my power back from the circumstances. And more importantly, from the energetic imprints and deep soul fears, soul wounds, and fears that they left in me that have affected me in this life. So much so that even though I could speak expertly on behalf of others as a criminal prosecutor, I still felt a lump form in my throat when I tried to speak for myself. And sometimes it was nearly impossible, and I froze or avoided it altogether. When you're like, oh, I'm okay, but you're definitely not okay. I was the queen of that. And when I started this podcast, I knew this was about, I'm going to speak my truth no matter the consequence, because not everybody believes in a soul. Not everybody agrees with what I stand for, what I'm here for, my soul mission. but I'm willing to speak my truth anyway. And in the situation that happened last week, again, not a coincidence, the timing of it all, I knew that I had to speak a deep truth to a dear friend. And I knew that she was not going to like this truth. I knew that it was going to hurt her because it wasn't what she wanted to hear. She wanted me to do something or give something that I didn't want to do or give. That was not in alignment for me. And if I had done it simply to avoid hurting her, I would have been dishonest, but also it would have been separating from myself in a way that I can't do anymore. And so I spoke my truth with as much love and compassion and authenticity as I could. Because when we speak our truth, it's not like, this is my truth, like it or not. It's with love. It's with an awareness of both self and other that we deeply speak our truth. And my truth did hurt her. And in her own wounding, she lashed out at me and was projecting a lot of her old wounds onto me, consciously or unconsciously, and accusing me, was very angry, and did reject me. And here's the thing. In the past, I would have taken that personally. In the past, I would have told myself, see, that's what happens when I speak my truth, right? Which happens when we are so identified with the fear or wound, we make everything around it confirm it. But I had released that identity, that it was unsafe to speak my truth. And I had claimed my truth and devoted to speaking my truth, no matter the consequence. And so as a result, I wasn't identifying or seeing it through that lens of another wounding. I was able to step outside of it and see it clearly, which is that it wasn't about me at all. Her lashing out, her rejection, her anger wasn't actually about me at all. It was about her and her wound. I had done the work to release any responsibility for her or her feelings. And so I didn't take it in. I didn't take it personally. I didn't make it mean anything about me. Because I had done the internal work to create internal safety, which is at the heart of everything I do with my clients, one-on-one or in groups, is to create internal safety, to source safety from within your divinity, because that is sovereignty. Through all of my years of research and studying of ancient civilizations, religious history, mythology, and people around the world, including deep, deep self-study, it is so incredibly clear to me that we cannot be sovereign unless we source safety from within. We cannot speak our truth unless we source safety from within. We cannot be in our power unless we source safety from within. Cannot liberate our sexuality and our ecstatic life force essence as women, particularly, until we source safety from within. Sovereignty is learning how to source from within safety, love, belonging, acceptance, value, worth. A little bit of light language wanted to come through. So just breathe into that. Because when we source this safety from within and reclaim sovereignty, we're no longer attached to other people's reaction to who we are or to our truth. Because we can see clearly. And we no longer reject ourselves to avoid the rejection of another. My deepest fear is that I couldn't, because of past lives and the experience of being rejected in my truth. My deepest fear was that I couldn't be loved in my truth, and then I couldn't be loved in my power. And that was mirrored to me, my own fear was mirrored to me in my past intimate relationships. Of not being loved in my power, of not being loved in my truth. It was intimidating. It was threatening. They didn't like it. It scared them. It meant they couldn't control me. And they couldn't. And I, at the time, thought there was something wrong with that because I wanted the love. But I can see now that I sought their love, at my own expense, which is very common. I see a lot of people doing that because we're taught to source love outside of ourselves. But also, what I now see is that the reason they couldn't love me in my power and truth is precisely because they couldn't control me. And they knew I didn't belong to them. And I never would, because I was free. Because when you're sovereign, you are free. You're untamed. You are uncontrolled. Think of Lilith, the first legendary wife of Adam in the story of Adam and Eve. In Jewish mythology, she was the first wife, and she refused to take an inferior, submissive position. She refused. And of course, she was demonized, like every other woman who has refused to be controlled. She was demonized. And she said, that's okay. Demonize me all you want. Call me what you will, but I will forever know my power and my truth. And I know I am divine. I know my worth. I don't need you to see it for me to see it. The epitome of sovereignty. And so I'm so grateful to the situation from last week in conjunction with the revealing of the podcast, because it got to embed that level of freedom and sovereignty within me even more deeply. The devotion to speaking my truth and the knowing, the actual lived experience of knowing. Reject me if you will. Demonize me if you want. But I will forever know my truth. And I forever know who and what I am, because I know and anchor into my divinity. And I know how to source love from within, which is what makes me uncontrollable and what allows me to speak my truth no matter the consequence. And I want every single one of you listening to know that, to feel that, to embody that, to experience that, to taste that, to breathe that, which is exactly what I do to help you reclaim your divine power and sovereignty, to experience that level of full-bodied, ecstatic freedom. And I would love to offer you that in a private container, if that calls to you in your soul, and you're ready for that level of transformation. And I also want to offer you a free heart activation, something I recorded last week. And it is a heart activation to open you to receive more love into your life and to attune to the frequency of your soul. Because the more that you attune to the frequency of your soul, the more you connect to your soul's truth, the greater power you reclaim from all external sources. So it returns to where it belongs, inside of you. I'll put a link both to the one-on-one offering to unleash your sovereign power below, and a link to the free heart activation below. And if you can walk forward with the devotion to speaking your truth with your heart, not from your ego. The ego truth needs to defend and fight and prove and all the things. That's not your soul. So from your soul, that devotion to connect to and to speak your soul's truth from your heart. Notice what shifts in your life. And I'll see you next week on the Soul Sovereignty and Sexuality Podcast. So be sure to subscribe so you get notified of new episodes, make a review, ask questions, post your comments, and I'll see you soon. So much love.